Our first story begins where laughter met its echo in the silence of a forgotten place. A monument to ambition and rust. The dare, in hindsight, was simple: to watch the day die from the best seat in the county. But the price was eternity. The sky over Redwood Creek was on fire, bleeding out in magnificent hues of blood orange and bruised purple. This was the last sunset, and perched on the edge of it all were Maya and Chloe, their legs dangling 100 feet above the water that snaked through Whispering Gulch. The old train trestle, a skeleton of oxidized steel, was their throne. A silver flask of cheap, sharp whiskey passed between them, a sacrament for the end of an era. Tomorrow, they would drive off in opposite directions, to different colleges, to different lives. "You think you'll actually become a world-famous photographer?" Chloe asked, her voice small against the vastness of the canyon. "Obviously," Maya shot back with a grin, taking a long pull from the flask. "And you'll be the brilliant, tortured novelist who writes about our tragic, beautiful youth." "End of rest," Chloe snorted, nudging her friend with a playful shoulder. "Tortured is right. You think they offer advanced procrastination or existential dread 101? I'd ace those." "You'd be the professor," Maya countered, a genuine warmth in her voice that cut through the whiskey burn. "Seriously, though, don't disappear into your books. Call me every day," Chloe promised, her voice suddenly soft. "I will." A comfortable silence settled, filled only by the whisper of the wind through the gulch. Maya pulled out her phone, its screen a harsh blue against the deepening twilight. She typed a quick message, her thumb hovering for a moment before pressing send. "You're missing the show. Where are you?" She looked at the screen. A small, infuriating notification popped up beneath her words. Undelivered text. She frowned, shaking her head slightly before shoving the phone back into her pocket. Liam was a ghost when it suited him. "You know," Chloe said, trying to break this sudden melancholy, "my grandpa used to say this whole gulch is haunted." She pointed a wobbly finger down the tracks. "He said, old miner Silas, who died building this very bridge, still walks these rails. He throws himself in front of the evening freight, and all you see is the single, swinging light from his lantern right before impact." Maya rolled her eyes, but a shiver traced a path down her spine. "That's a cheerful thought. Thanks for that." They laughed it off, secure in their youth, in their invincibility. Ghosts were for campfires, not for them. Not here. That's when they heard it. It wasn't the familiar, distant rumble of the scheduled 8:15 freight. No. This was a guttural blast that ripped through the canyon. A deep, angry bellow that felt like it came from the earth itself. The ancient metal of the train trestle began to vibrate. A low hum that grew into a violent, bone-jarring shudder. They looked at each other, the laughter dying in their throats, their eyes wide with a question that had no time for an answer. This was something else entirely. In the space of a heartbeat, the world became a nightmare of sound and fury. The train burst around the canyon bend, a monstrous apparition against the dying light. It was moving too fast. Impossibly fast. This wasn't the familiar evening freight. It was a mismatched convoy of ghosts. A line of rusted, graffiti-covered coal hoppers that rattled and swayed with a life of their own. Then came the sound, a high-pitched, terrifying screech of metal on metal. That was a physical force. A sound that tore through the air and vibrated deep inside their bones. It was the sound of physics failing. The lead car hit a warped section of the trestle and lurched violently sideways, For a frozen second, it seemed to hang in the air, defying gravity before its immense weight surrendered, pulling the cars behind it into a catastrophic chain reaction. The symphony of screeching metal began. It wasn't just a sound, it was a physical assault. The immense structure of the trestle began to sway beneath them like a rope bridge in a hurricane. They could hear the sharp, gunshot-like cracks of century-old rivets popping from their moorings. One by one, panic, pure and electric, seized them. Steel groaned, twisted, and tore apart with explosive force. Time seemed to warp, stretching the seconds into an eternity of chaos. Maya and Chloe scrambled backward. A desperate, clumsy retreat on the narrow ledge. But it was like trying to outrun an earthquake. There was nowhere to go. It was too late. In that sliver of a second, their eyes met. An entire lifetime of friendship, shared secrets, inside jokes, tearful nights flashed between them in a silent, final exchange. There was no scream, just a shared, wide-eyed understanding that this was the end. The world had run out of time for them. The first hopper car, its top open to the sky, tipped directly towards them. It did not spill coal. What poured out was a cascade of something much worse, a black tide of dark, heavy earth mixed with the jagged shapes of old, discarded mining equipment, twisted metal, rusted gears, and sharp-edged scrap tumbled through the air like a shower of shrapnel. In the dim twilight, the debris formed hellish shapes, like skeletal arms and grasping claws reaching for them. The avalanche of debris was instant and absolute. A wave of darkness that swallowed the ledge, the girls, and their last terrified screams. And then, silence. An unnatural quiet descended upon Whispering Gulch, profound and heavy. The violent roar was gone, replaced by the gentle settling of dust motes dancing in the last sliver of sunset. Below, the creek continued its indifferent, gentle lapping against the shore. The last of the sun's rays painted the scene in a beautiful, cruel irony, illuminating the fresh scar upon the landscape. The mangled steel of the train cars seemed to sigh as it settled, a final exhalation after its violent fit. Amidst the wreckage, half buried in the dark soil, a small light glowed. It was Maya's phone. Its screen was a spiderweb of cracks, but it was still lit, displaying the last words she ever wrote. A question that would now hang in the silence forever, an undelivered text. While one mystery lay buried in the canyon, another was just taking flight hundreds of miles away. The forbidden flight. The prize was bragging rights, but the entry fee was a federal crime. Hundreds of miles from that unnatural quiet in the canyon, in the sprawling concrete jungle of Viridia City, another kind of story was taking flight, one fueled by adrenaline and arrogance. 17-year-old Leo was the king of this world. His custom-built drone, a carbon fiber hornet named Wraith, whined through the air, effortlessly weaving through the trees of the city's largest park. He and his rivals were in the final moments of a tense drone race, a frantic chase to a small flag fluttering in the center of a wide-open field. But Leo didn't do wide open. He did shortcuts. It was his signature move, the one that got him the wins and the reputation. Rules were for the slow, the predictable. He flew on instinct, a hair's breadth from disaster. And that's what made him the best. With a cocky smirk, he banked the Wraith hard left, pushing it towards the park's edge. "Don't do it, Leo," one of his rivals shouted over their comms channel. "That's out of bounds." The boundary was a tall, chain-link fence topped with glittering coils of barbed wire. On the other side was the Viridia Municipal Energy Compound, a place surrounded by stark red signs warning of high voltage, trespassing, and, in no uncertain terms, death. It was the perfect forbidden flight path. Leo pushed the throttle. The drone screamed over the fence, a blur of speed. For a moment, his video feed goggles showed him a perfect bird's eye view of victory. Then the feed glitched. The image stuttered, tearing for a split second. But in that tear, he saw something. Something wrong. Not the manicured grass he expected, but two figures in bulky white hazmat suits, hastily dragging a heavy green tarp over a large, misshapen object on the ground. It was a strange, fleeting image, a flash of mysterious footage that made no sense. His mind reeled, trying to categorize the image. Was that a body bag? The thought was absurd. A phantom from a movie. But it was sticky and refused to be dismissed. The momentary lapse in concentration was all it took. Before his brain could even process the question, a wave of energy, a silent pulse from the heart of the energy compound, hit his drone. The whine of the motors died instantly. The video feed in his goggles went black. The Wraith, his masterpiece, his ticket to local fame, tumbled from the sky and disappeared behind the menacing fence. Silence on the comms channel. Then, laughter. His rivals landed their drones and jogged over, their faces a mixture of mockery and awe. Lost your wings, champ? One of them jeered. What was that? Did you see something weird? Another asked, a little more seriously. The first one pushed. He's not going in there. He's scared. The challenge was laid. A toxic blend of peer pressure and genuine curiosity. Go on, Leo. Go get your bird. Or are you scared of what you saw? The challenge hung in the air, heavier than the city humidity. His reputation, his expensive machine, and a secret he didn't even understand were all on the other side of that fence. The silent hum of 1,000,000 volts. He was so focused on what he had to gain, he never saw what he was about to lose. What's the worst that could happen? Leo muttered. The 4 words that have preceded countless tragedies. Pride won. It always did. He took a running start at the first 7-foot fence, his hands finding easy purchase in the chain link mesh. The taunts of his friends faded behind him, replaced by the singular focus of the climb. He moved with a practiced grace, carefully avoiding the razors of barbed wire at the top before dropping to the ground on the other side with a soft thud. A surge of adrenaline hit him, hot and sharp. He was in. He glanced back through the chain link, seeing his friends as distant, cheering silhouettes. He was putting on the show of a lifetime for them. This wasn't just about getting his drone back, it was about cementing his legend. Through the second fence, he could see it, the black shell of the Wraith, lying motionless in the grass. It was so close. The second fence was identical to the first. Just another obstacle in a game he was determined to win. He didn't hesitate. As his feet left the ground and he began to scale the second fence, he felt it. A low hum, almost imperceptible, vibrated through the metal into the bones of his hands and up his arms. It was a strange, deep thrumming that he could feel in his teeth. All around him, the fence was plastered with warnings. Red signs with white skulls, yellow signs with jagged lightning bolts, stark black letters spelling out high voltage and no trespassing. But to Leo, they were just background noise, part of the landscape. His eyes were locked on the drone, his prize, He carefully cleared the barbed wire and dropped down again, landing with a soft, springy impact. The ground felt strange, almost spongy. It wasn't grass, it was a mat of thick, black rubber insulation. A weird choice for landscaping, he thought. But it made sense in a way, probably to keep the dust down from all the giant humming transformers that dotted the compound like metal tombstones. The place was creepy, but his prize was just steps away. But time and weather had taken their toll. One section near where he landed was torn and frayed. Lying in the gap was a thick, dark braid of copper wire. An exposed wire he barely registered, dismissing it as a gnarled tree root in the dim light. From the other side of the compound, he could hear the muffled cheers of his friends. He was the hero. He walked over, scooped up the drone, and turned back toward them, a triumphant, cocky smile spreading across his face. He held the wraith up like a trophy and took a single, casual step backward to give them a better view. His friends saw the smile. They saw the drone held high. And then they saw a silent, brilliant blue flash erupt from within the compound. A flash so intense it momentarily turned the evening sky to noon before plunging everything back into an even deeper darkness. The plastic coffin of Kidtopia. Some dangers scream their presence with flashes of light and humming wires. Others, however, are far keener, hiding in plain sight, waiting in the most unexpected of places. The place was called Kidtopia. But for one man, it became a tomb. David was a large, gentle man who hated places like this. The air in the indoor adventure park was a chaotic symphony of screaming children, blaring arcade games, and the tinny pop music that seemed to be the universal soundtrack for suburban misery. As a former search and rescue volunteer, David had an eye for structural integrity, and everything about Kidtopia felt cheap, flimsy, and one loose bolt away from disaster. He was only here for his son's friend's 7th birthday party. A fact he repeated to himself like a mantra. Just then, the birthday boy, a small kid with a sugar-fueled grin, ran up to him. "Look what I found, Mr. D." He held out a strange object. It was a spinning top, but not a modern plastic one. This was made of dark, heavy wood, intricately carved with patterns that seemed far too old for a place like this. It was just sitting by the entrance to the wormhole, the boy said, pointing to the park's main attraction. The wormhole was a vast, multicolored plastic tunnel maze that snaked its way up toward the ceiling like a giant, psychedelic intestine. Curiosity, element number 3. David gave the boy a weak smile, patting him on the head. He didn't care about some weird toy. He just wanted a coffee. But his son was already waving him over, ready to plunge into the maze, trying to be a fun dad. David sighed and got down on his hands and knees. The journey into the plastic tubes was immediately claustrophobic. The air was stale, thick with the smell of disinfectant and hot plastic. He was too big for this. His shoulders scraped against the sides, and he had to shuffle forward like an infant. The laughter of the kids echoed ahead of him, growing more distant. He navigated a red spiral, then a blue junction, and made a wrong turn, following what he thought was the sound of his son into a tighter, yellow-colored tunnel. It was a dead end. "Guys, wait up," he called, his voice muffled. No reply. Annoyed, he began the awkward process of a U-turn. He was on his hands and knees, trying to fold his larger frame back on itself. He twisted his torso, getting his head and shoulders pointing back the way he came. But his lower body wouldn't follow. He pushed, and that's when he heard it. A sickening crack. It wasn't loud, but it was decisive. A section of the cheap plastic tunnel behind him had shifted, buckling under his weight. His hips and legs were pinned. He was wedged, hopelessly, in a U-shape. At first, he didn't panic. His training kicked in. Assess the situation. Don't waste energy. Control your breathing. He was a former rescuer. He knew the protocol. He tried to shift his weight, to leverage himself out. But the plastic only groaned, digging deeper into his back. The pressure on his abdomen and chest was immense. "Help," he called out. The word swallowed by the plastic. "Somebody. Help." He could hear them, just a few turns away. The faint, echoing sounds of the party continued. The music, the laughter. The minutes stretched into an agonizing hour. The calm, measured breaths his training demanded were gone, replaced by short, panicked gasps. The pressure was crushing him, making each inhalation a desperate, losing battle. The bright, cheerful yellow of the tunnel began to feel like the inside of a plastic coffin. And the former rescuer, the man who had pulled people from rubble and wreckage, was filled with a surge of pure, animal terror as he realized he was trapped, and no one could get to him. Finally, the echoes of their choices have faded. Look around you. Listen to the quiet warnings and the hum of the world. Can you see the invisible lines in your own life? And do you have the courage not to cross them?